Hello again, Frugal Force. Once again, this is Captain Frugal, and this episode is the Avengers retrospective of issue 1.5. Alright, Frugal fans, this issue was printed in 1996. Now, as I mentioned in my previous video, 1.5 was created well after issue 2 was actually made. So it sort of gives them a look back and be able to sort of write a fill-in during that time of what the story was. Alright, so this issue gets the benefit then of hindsight, as it gets to know how others view the Avengers and what has happened. So they get to tie little integral things into it, which is sort of nice. Now, the date and credit, as you can see here on the issue. Also, they've added classic advertisements, much like you've seen when I showed the first one from the first issue. And I love that. I think that was a nice little throwback showing that classic, giving it respect. Now, as I read the book and this issue, I'm constantly reminded of how the team will progress and how they actually impact the Marvel Universe. Avengers is one of the great things about the Avengers, and is commonly known as they don't always get together and get along real well. There's usually a lot of tension, and that's what makes that book quite interesting. Granted, there was tension in the Fantastic Four, but they were a family. They're more like a family rather than a team, where this is a team that nothing really holds them together other than their own self-interest and interest to help the world. Now, I like how this book showed how many the people, as well as the Avengers themselves, were uneasy with the Hulk being on the team. And if you know your Avengers history, you know what will happen with that later. If not, keep viewing my videos. I'll be covering that very soon, because it's only a few more issues and that will happen. Now, I like how this story also shows the Wasp and her flirty nature. Even though I do tend to think maybe they overdid it a little bit in this book and pushed it a little too much, but she's always known to have been more of a party, flirty kind of person. They've changed her character a lot over the years. They've still keep some of that, but they've almost made her more serious than ever before. Maybe that's just the years and the evolution of the character. Now, in this issue, the government sends Major Bowman to represent the government and share their concern that they have with Doctor Doom. Now, so Mr. Bowman goes there, and as they discuss the situation, they're alerted that Doom is regaining his flying fortress from the government impound. And so that happens to be right as they're telling the story. So the Avengers leap into action. A fun fact, this is before the Quinjets were made by Iron Man. So they took a helicopter, it's a jet copter, and they talk a little bit about how fancy of a futuristic copter this is. And Iron Man even looked quite impressed by it. Alright, so the helicopter and the Avengers get pulled in to the flying fortress by a grappler ray. But, talk about retro, right? I will say, too, this book has an interesting art throwback style, but it's not quite the same. I don't love it, but it's okay. I don't hate it at all either. It's just, I think it's a good fit. Now, as I said, the Avengers were getting pulled into this grappler ray, but the Wasp stays back with the helicopter to protect the Major, just to find out shortly after that he might be working for the Doom because he knocks her out. We'll get into this more in a little bit. While in the Flying Fortress, the Avengers are surprised with traps on this fortress. The traps were originally designed to capture the Fantastic Four, but they really do seem to be able to work well on the Avengers. Meanwhile, while the Avengers like Thor are fighting off this trap, Hulk is getting caught in the trap, Ant-Man discovers the real Major Bowman. And discovering that the one on the helicopter then must have been an imposter, because if Major Bowman's here, who's that with the Wasp? And that imposter is none other than Doctor Doom. As we also find that Iron Man thought he was getting Doctor Doom, and it wasn't Doctor Doom after all, and it was his trap. Now, Doom reveals his plan is to simply kill the Avengers for posterity. And then he's going to take out the Fantastic Four and become the master of all. Now, if that's not an old school classic take over the world story, I don't know what is. So it really does fit well with the time period. But Dr. Doom did not know that Ant-Man also has the ability to grow at this point. So Hank Pym escapes and frees the other heroes. Because, as you know, Hank Pym has been an evolutionary character. His character's constantly evolving because he's never really happy and satisfied with what he is and what he can do. Even though if he's done some amazing things, granted he's had some periods of time also later on that's been very negative, he doesn't really ever give himself enough credit for what he does do. Now, just as Dr. Doom is ready to share his deeds with the rest of the world, because remember, he's got the Avengers crash his plans. They surprise him. Hulk shows Doom his strength as you see him get angry and rip Doom's head off. But just then we discover that it's really a Doom bot. It's not Dr. Doom. And the other Avengers, like Iron Man's like, oh, how'd you know it was a robot? Well, he didn't really know it was a robot. It just happened to be. Now, the Flying Fortress is going down. Doom set it up to crash, so he was never on this thing in the first place. And the Avengers need to escape. They do find an escape pod, but then there comes an issue. It's only big enough for one person. Now, Thor does mention, though, that Ant-Man and Wasp could also fit on there because they can shrink down. While doing this debate on what they're going to do about the situation, Hulk pushes Major Bowman in the ship and sets him off to safety. Well, it was quite heroic. Granted, Thor and things maybe thought it wasn't the best move to do. It's funny how Hulk was the one to be heroic and figure out how to escape to safety, even though he's notoriously looked at as angry, quick to act, little to think. He really showed a lot more here. And that's something I think that was very interesting. It also shows his heroicness, because remember, he's always pinned, and everyone has to watch him. He's pigeonholed, and that he could go off at any time. But you look, he's the one that did the thing, that maybe nobody else could do at the time. Now, the Avengers land safely. They bust out. Hulk breaks their wall through the Flying Fortress, and they land safely and discuss their accomplishment. And the story ends showing us that Dr. Doom is still very much alive. And it also shows his respect for the Avengers, and assuring the reader that he's not going to underestimate that team next time. He underestimated him and he knows better. Doom is learning from this. It does a great job of using a very powerful, high-level villain, showing, how deadly he can be even against an entire team. Overall, this was a fun issue. It's a nice throwback. And overall, it's definitely worth a read if you can find it. Well, that was the end of issue 1.5. I hope you stick around for the next episode where we go back farther in history, because remember, this one jumped forward, and look at issue number 2. So until next time, Frugal Force, keep it frugal. I do appreciate you watching this video, and if you do want to help support me and Little Frugal, the best way to do that is to go ahead and join on VidMe. Go to my VidMe channel, as you see here. And the ways you can help me is 2 ways. One, you can leave a tip, or you can subscribe for just $1 a month. That's the best way to help support me. So once again, it's go to VidMe. If you're not already here, if you're using YouTube, go to VidMe. You can either tip and or subscribe. That would really help Little Frugal and I to continue to be able to do this and have this fun together. I would really appreciate that, and until next time, keep it frugal.